What's going on, y'all? It's Big Facts again, coming at you with another video. So recently, all throughout, I came across some recent trending news, which is the statue wars, in which Black Lives Matter advocate or social activist Shaun King had recently tweeted out, in support of taking down murals, paintings or different figures that represent white Jesus, or European like Jesus. And with everything that has been going on in light in the recent news of Confederate statues being taken down, many tend to speculate that this is just part of the great plan to push down communism in the United States, that the communists are taking over. I mean, already recently, one of the Black Lives Matter groups, I think it's the lady by their name is, her name is escaping me. But one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, she had recently came out to state that she was a Marxist, as many people have already, suspected. Those that are in the know, who actually take the time to actually investigate these things, they come to find out that, she's a Marxist. Yeah, her name, Patrisse Cullors, Patrisse Cullors, she was on the Real News and she came out to state that she was a Marxist. And one of the tenets of Marxism, people tend to say is that they do not, basically that they're atheists. And we can argue about it back and forth. I mean, even here, there's statements where Karl Marx had even, he didn't really necessarily resonate with atheist sentiments, or didn't really show to be a staunch atheist, because Karl Marx in The Wages of Labor, written in 1844, he even has been quoted to say or wrote that to develop in great spiritual freedom, people must break their bondage of their bodily needs. They must cease to be slaves of the body. They must above all have the time at their disposal for spiritual creative activity and spiritual enjoyment. So right there, doesn't necessarily mean he's a full-blown atheist. That's subject for speculation. But nonetheless, when you see things like Stalinist Russia, Mao's China, they all believed, in having some sort of state-run atheist society. They did not want to promote religion in their society. That is a fact. Look it up. Stalin's Russia and Mao's China. These are areas, in which they did not want, religion to permeate in their society. They believed in an atheist state, which is why people had the notion that communism equates to atheism. Nonetheless, I say that to say this, a lot of things have been showing that America is headed down that track of communism, and I say that, partly to blame for a lot of this is the failure of capitalism to a lot of the segments of society. Now, to understand what capitalism, not everybody's going to win. Fair enough. But what people have to understand is the elite and those wealthy individuals, or the 5%, 1%, whatever you want to consider them, they have not been practicing true capitalism, and the government has not been practicing true capitalism with them. And the reason why I say that is, look at here. If anything, they've been practicing communism, or socialism, whatever you want to call it, in that aspect. Because look at this. In troubling precedent that the Federal Reserve is going to sit there and continue to fund these zombie companies that don't deserve to exist. So initially, what they're saying in this statement by Scott Miner Guggenheim is that the federal government, in their action of buying junk bonds, they are basically funding companies that should necessarily phase out. In capitalism, when you fail, you are supposed to be wiped out in capitalism. Those goods and services, those assets now are going to be, redistributed, put back into the system so that a new, more flourishing company or organization can arise from that. But no, that's not happening. When you even look at this, there's speculation that U.S. stocks are soon to be bought by the U.S. government. The U.S. government will be moving into buying stocks. The Federal Reserve is buying junk bonds and corporate debt, ETFs, as part of the campaign to revive the American economy. Next on its shopping list, U.S. stocks, as Scott Minerd, global chief investment officer of the Guggenheim Partners, told CNN Business. This is true because with the shutdown that has gone on in the U.S. economy due to COVID, with the pandemic going on, how is the stock market rising? How is the stock market soaring, meeting almost near all-time highs? And that is because the Federal Reserve is moving into buying stocks, buying bonds, junk bonds of these companies. They're the ones that are propping it up. And if the U.S. government is moving into buying stocks and bonds, primarily stocks, let me tell you, we're all going to be government employees, and we're basically going to end up like how China and Russia is. And the reason why I say that is look at the leading company revenues in the world. This is a list of the largest companies in the world by revenue. 3 out of the top 5 are what? State-owned enterprises. The government owns 50% or more of those enterprises. 3 of the top 5. We have the Sinopec Group. This is a Chinese state-owned, state-run company. China National Petroleum, another China-ran state-owned organization. State Grid, China. 3 of the top 5 ran by the Chinese government. So if the United States starts buying stocks, let's say stocks of like Walmart, and they own about 50% of the outstanding shares, this becomes another state-ran organization. Walmart. Just put that in perspective as an example. And what does that mean? What does that make the United States? The United States becomes no different from China or Russia. Even when you look at other superpower like Russia, when you look at Gazprom, for example, the largest company in Russia by revenue, Gazprom, that is a state-ran organization. State-ran. Even search them in Google. Search them up in Google. This is a state-owned, Gazprom is partially state-owned multinational energy corporation. And let me tell you, and this is true because Vladimir Putin has had a hand on putting in, the leaders of Gazprom. Vladimir Putin has a seat at the table in deciding that. So people have to be aware of this. Even when you look at the largest banks in the world, the largest bank in the world is Industrial Bank of China. Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Look at them. With over $4 trillion worth of assets. $4 trillion worth of assets is a state-run organization. All of these. For the top 5. It's ridiculous. So when you talk about like how the United States, whether it's moving towards communism, I mean, it is a very fair speculation. Very, very fair speculation to think that. All right. And the reason being why many people, especially advocates like Shaun King, and especially people of that nature are moving into that realm is because capitalism has failed many of the people, or these countries like the United States, who are the vanguard of capitalism, have failed to actually practice it to its fullest and purest form. Okay? We know there's going to be winners and losers in capitalism. People can accept that fact, but they're not practicing true capitalism. If anything, they're practicing gorging capitalism, where the people at the top continue to take, and making matters even worse and worse for people, pushing them to almost a feudal society. And if you look at anything throughout history repeats itself. When you have this level of gorging capitalism, where people are becoming more disenfranchised, and then you have this monopoly or these oligarchies of people at the top controlling things, these plutocracies essentially. What do you have? Revolution to happen. Look at France. Look at Russia. 2 major revolutions that were all based upon the fact that the working class people have been driven to their last. And what happened? An overthrow. And what came about it? Socialist ideals, communist ideals came about in those countries. Look at the French Revolution and look at the Russian Revolution. And that revolutions are going to happen in the United States if things do not change. That is the truth. Especially, if the United States government, the Federal Reserve, moves into buying U.S. stocks. This just goes to show you we're moving more to a capitalist society. More to a communist society. Already you see socially, they're trying to take down, they're trying to remove it. They're trying to remove statues of Christ. And I do not agree with Shaun King doing this, because you can go to Korean churches. You can paint. We have religious freedom, separation of church and state. There should be no way the government should be stepping in, telling people to remove statues or paintings of any deity that they believe that they want to worship. Go to Korean churches. They have Jesus painted as a Korean man, but everybody knows Jesus is not Asian. So if these white churches want to have Jesus painted as a European male, let them be it. I just say to answer that, black people, then we continue to promote and propagate our black Jesus. Because that's our religious freedom of expression. But we all know what Jesus is. Everybody knows Jesus is a black man, or a person of color, whatever you want to call it. We all know this. Jesus is a man of color, however you want to call him. He's not white, that's for sure. So, moreover, just to put things in light and perspective, and I'm going to do more videos on this, the United States is moving more towards a communist, in fact, more towards communism, and that's more so because of the failure of the U.S. government in practicing true capitalism. What we've had is gorging capitalism, all right? People at the top have just continued to hoard wealth, continue to put things to the extreme, pushing people into dire straits, even more and more vast income inequality, where people don't even have a chance. And from there sparks a revolution into going into more extremities like communism. All right. So, like I said, I'll just continue to update you guys with more videos on what's going on. And I mean, it's not the United States only doing. Like, foreign central banks are already buying stocks. Like, already central banks around the world are doing this thing. The Bank of Japan, they've already been buying ETFs. Switzerland's central bank, they've been taking out huge stakes in Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. So this is a very troubling precedent, as it's stated right here. Very troubling precedent. Only time will tell what happens. But there definitely needs to be a change. What needs to happen is, the United States just basically has a lot of these failing companies, just let them fail. We need to give it a chance that we have to just hit the reset button and let those at the bottom have a chance to make it. We have to help spur entrepreneurial beliefs, entrepreneurial practices, give them a chance. Because with anchors like student loan debt, yet you're giving out, you're buying junk bonds for companies that should fail. You don't want to cancel student loan debt, yet you want to give chances to failing companies. That's not right. That's not capitalism. If anything, that is communism for the top, for the 1%. There you go. That's communism for the 1%. So the people now are seeing that and say, hey, if it's good, what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. That's what it is. So they're going to practice their own form of communism. They're going to have the revolution and topple the people at the top. And that's what's going on. And even look at this, Minard, too. He goes on to say, call the Fed's junk bond experiment an almost socialist program based on the notion that the government has an obligation to keep companies liquid in finances as opposed to just keeping the market functioning. Clear as day. Economists, whatever you want to call them, they're all calling this is move towards a socialist, communist type of program. So things need to change. People have to be aware of this, that the reason why you're seeing these communist practices pop up is because communism is being practiced at the top. We're doing communism for the top 1%. This gorging type of capitalism where everybody is not having a fair shake or equal opportunity is what's costing this great nation. It's costing a lot of people to be, to fall into a lot of these illogical, these radical type of ideologies. And if this continues, a revolution will happen. But I want to hear what y'all have to say. Like, comment, subscribe down below. I'm out.